My younger brother sent a group text late on a Friday night, the kind of message a person fires off without thinking, never imagining how deep it might cut. He wrote, "Don't come to the barbecue. My wife says you ruin the vibe." Just that. No explanation. No softening. No joking emoji. And in the seconds that followed, our parents reacted with little floating hearts like it was some kind of family comedy skit. I didn't reply with anger. I didn't demand clarification. I simply typed, "Okay. My name is Parker Whitfield. I'm 35 and I oversee advanced engineering at a biotech corporation called Ardenex Laboratories, right in the heart of Raleigh. We are weeks away from releasing a medical platform that will shift the market for good, something most people spend their entire careers just dreaming about. But to my family, I'm still the odd one, the quiet sister, the one they joke about for missing holidays because of lab stuff. They imagine I scrape by in a white coat counting bacteria for lunch money." After the text, I flipped my phone face down on my desk and returned to the contracts worth more than anything my parents' entire street had ever sold for. When someone shows me I'm unwanted, I don't fight to stay. I let absence do the teaching. If you've ever been the relative they roll their eyes at, the one they treat like background noise, you'll understand exactly why I didn't say anything then. You'll also understand why the next morning changed everything. By 9:20 a.m. Saturday, my assistant buzzed through on the office intercom. "Parker, there's a woman downstairs who says she has to speak with the person in charge of Angel Investments. She refuses to give her name. She claims it's urgent. Her husband is with her." I told her to send them up. 2 minutes later, the elevator doors glided open, and the last people I expected walked into my corner office. First came Tessa, my brother's wife, tight red dress, heels clicking like she owned the marble floor, sunglasses perched on her head as if she'd just stepped off a music video shoot. Behind her was Gavin, my brother, shuffling in with his hands in his pockets, eyes trained on the carpet. They stopped cold when they saw me behind the desk. Tessa's sunglasses slid right out of her hand and clattered on the floor. "Parker?" She breathed, staring between my face, the brass nameplate, and the 20-foot company logo behind me. "You work here?" Gavin blinked like his brain had crawled out of his skull. "This is your office?" I didn't bother standing. "I'm the executive director of engineering," I said. "What do you need?" Tessa recovered too fast. Her shock snapped into a bright, sugary smile as if she'd been practicing it in the elevator. She practically pranced forward, dropping a glossy pitch deck onto my desk. "This is incredible timing," she squealed. "I'm raising funds for my diagnostic startup QuickCheck clinical total disruptor, like seriously revolutionary. We just need $2 million to push it through clearance." "And you," she said, tapping the desk as if I were a button, "are in the perfect field. You can literally just sign off." My brother nodded vigorously. "Yeah, Park. It's a sure thing. Family helps family, right?" I didn't touch the binder. "You came to my job unannounced, on a holiday weekend, asking me for $2 million? "Exactly," she chirped. "That's what family is for." "No," I said. Her smile died instantly. Her voice pitched up. "What do you mean?" "No, you're saying no to your brother?" Gavin stepped up beside her. "Come on. This could change our lives." Leave," I said calmly. The entire open office outside my glass walls was dead silent rows of engineers, suddenly hyper-focused on their monitors. I could feel every set of ears tilting in our direction. Tessa flushed red, her temper cracking open. "Are you serious right now?" she shouted. "You sit up here in your shiny office, making who knows how much money, and you can't help your own flesh and blood? That is exactly why nobody wants you around." Security appeared before I even pressed the call button. 2 guards already moving in. "Ma'am, you need to lower your voice and exit the building," one said. Tessa whipped toward him. "Do you even know who she is?" "That would be her." "Brother," he replied, nodding at Gavin. Gavin tugged her wrist. "Tess, enough. Let's just go." She snatched her arm back. No. She doesn't get to treat us like trash. But the guards were done listening. They guided them toward the elevator, Tessa shouting threats of lawsuits the entire way. Gavin glanced back at me, his expression twisted with betrayal. You really chose this place over us? The doors shut before I answered. My assistant stepped in the moment the chaos disappeared. Your brother's wife is... a lot, she said. I slid the pitch deck into the shredder. Watched it turn to ribbons. My phone began vibrating in rapid bursts almost instantly. Gavin. 6 calls in 10 minutes. On the 5th, I picked up. What do you want? I asked. His voice snapped with outrage. Tessa is humiliated. You made a fool of us in front of your entire company. You couldn't give us 5 minutes? You had to call security? She's been crying nonstop because of you. I waited in silence. You're heartless, Parker, he continued. Always have been. I took a sip of coffee. Are you done? I asked. He hung up. 10 minutes later, the text began. Gavin, you ruined our future. Gavin, Tessa is devastated. Gavin, hope your big office keeps you warm at night. I muted the thread. That's when the alert appeared at the top of my screen. Pre-approval submitted, $485,600 personal loan. Cosigner, Parker Whitfield. Borrowers, Gavin and Tessa Whitfield. They had used my old pay stubs, my SSN, financial info from SK filings. Even my previous address. At 2:14 a.m. they'd applied to buy me into nearly $500,000 of debt. I called my banker, had the application terminated, fraud flagged, and locked. A confirmation hit my inbox minutes later. I sent the PDF of the denial straight to Gavin. He called immediately. Declined. He called again. Declined. Then Tessa's number lit up the screen. You think you're clever? She hissed. You blocked our loan like a child. You stole my identity, I said. It's called supporting family. Something you clearly don't understand. You forged my signature. She scoffed. You make more money than you can spend. What's 480 to you? Then her voice sharpened. To ice. I'm telling your parents everything. When I'm done, you won't be welcome anywhere. Start with how you tried to take $500,000 in my name. I said. Nothing. Silence. You'll regret this, she finally snapped. I promise. The call ended. By mid-morning, the group chat exploded. Mom. Parker, how could you embarrass your brother like that? Gavin, she called security on us over money. Dad, you two need to fix this. I left everything on read. At noon, Tessa posted a tear-stained Instagram story about toxic relatives obsessed with status, tagging the company. Legal was ready to respond, but I told them to hold. Then another. Alert. New joint credit application submitted. $50,000 limit. Names. Gavin and Parker. I had that killed before it even processed. I spent the next hour placing fraud freezes on every bureau, locking all future credit activity, contacting every lender, and disabling all auto approvals. They weren't going to stop. I could see that now. That evening, an unmarked envelope showed up at my door. Inside, a 42-page private investigation report on Tessa commissioned by my father. He'd been suspicious for months. He hadn't known how to bring it up. The report was devastating bankruptcy records from her first marriage, evidence of credit, card schemes, loan fraud, personal debt nearing $200,000, and a pattern of draining partners dry before discarding them. My father's short-handwritten note was tucked inside. I didn't know how to tell you. If anyone can handle this, it's you. I'm sorry. I opened my laptop and emailed Maverick, her first husband, the man she'd financially destroyed. I asked for 5 minutes of his time. He responded within 6 minutes. Tell me where. And when, no charge. Then I checked property records for the home Gavin and Tessa lived in. The deed was still in my name. I had bought it years earlier so Gavin wouldn't struggle while sorting out his career. I had never transferred ownership. I still paid the mortgage. Every month I turned off the auto payment. Set a meeting with my real estate attorney. Drafted the notice, For the first time that day, I felt calm. Tomorrow was the barbecue, and I knew exactly how everything would unfold. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I mapped out everything I would need. The deed, the private investigator's binders, Maverick's contact info, my bank statements, the notices my attorney would file. I printed, annotated, and boxed every scrap of paper that could turn rumor into record. By Sunday evening, I was ready. I pulled into the driveway of the house I still owned with the headlights cutting through the dusk. Maverick stepped out of my passenger door, tall, steady. The sort of man who looked like trouble had already tried and failed to knock him down. He carried a slim manila folder with an expression that knew what it held and didn't need to be told. Gavin came to the door before we reached the porch, his face a portrait of confusion that said he'd been jerked awake by a scare he couldn't. Parker, what are you doing here? He demanded. I walked straight past him and into the living room. Tessa was on the couch, casual in leggings and a loose top, scrolling as if she had all the time in the world. She looked up when the front door closed behind us, and the color drained from her face. Mav, she whispered, and it came out like a question. Maverick shut the door gently, then set his folder on the coffee table. He unfolded it and opened to pages that read like a timeline of disaster, court-stamped bankruptcy filings, a foreclosure notice from years ago, 8 max cards, creditors' letters. There was a signature on every page that matched hers and a date that matched the worst of his downfall. Kessa sprang up like a cat, all teeth and deflection. This is an ambush, she snapped. You can't. This is harassment. Maverick let the evidence speak. He turned his phone and laid up a gallery of old messages between him and Tessa texts where she coached him to sign loan after loan, promises that this is temporary, declarations of how soon they'd be rich. Her voice, which had been silky and practiced in my office, caught and broke when she realized the messages matched the paperwork. Gavin's face folded in on itself. He shuffled toward the table, eyes scanning documents like they were in a foreign language. This can't be real, he said, voice thin. This is wrong. I set down one more piece of paper on top of the ledger of evidence, my name in bold on the recorded deed, dated 3 years earlier. I watched him read the first line and felt his color leave. I bought this house so you could get on your feet, I said. I never transferred title. The mortgage is in my name. The insurance is in my name. Everything. My voice was calm. The kind of calm that's not peace, but rather a machine that has been well-oiled and knows exactly how to operate. I turned off autopay this morning. I scheduled a formal notice to vacate. 30 days. Tessa laughed thin and high, the sound of someone playing a part she suddenly realized had been miscast. You wouldn't, she began, but the sentence collapsed. Gavin's right hand went to my arm, urgent and pleading. You can't make us homeless, he said. You're my sister. Please, you had 30 days, I replied. You chose to live as if nothing would happen. For a heartbeat, maybe two, everything in the room held breath. Then Tessa's face crumpled into something raw and theatrical, tears streaming fast enough to be convincing. Please, she sobbed. Don't do this to us in front of our friends, in front of Mom and Dad. I'm pregnant, she tried for the ultimate leverage, a story that would stop anything and everything. Maverick's gaze didn't flinch. You told me the same story, he said slowly. About being pregnant, about miracles, everything you needed to make me sign. He closed the folder with a small, final thud. Gavin dropped to his knees and grabbed at my jeans. I swear I didn't know. I didn't know how bad it was. I love her, I love her. You love the idea of her, I said. Love doesn't excuse fraud. I picked up my keys. 30 days starts tonight. I left them standing in the doorway, Tessa screaming that I was ruining everything. Gavin pleading. The evidence lay like landmines at their feet. Maverick followed me to the car, and for the ride back, we didn't trade more than a few sentences. He wanted an apology from the world. I wanted the truth known. We both got what we came for. A clean, Practical division between deception and accountability. That night, Gavin called and called until the incoming icon lit my phone like a strobe. He left one voice message after another: pleas, apologies, confessions. I erased them unread. There was no solace in his calls, only the echo of a life he'd let himself be easy about. Monday morning, I arrived at the office and sent the email. My attorney had drafted and notarized over the weekend. 3 crisp pages. The first spelled out the immediate cessation of all financial support. The second declared the house's ownership under my name and revoked any permission to occupy. The third gave them 30 calendar days to collect their belongings or face formal eviction procedures, and warned that any tampering with fixtures, secret liens, or removal of property would be met with both civil and criminal ramifications. The subject line read exactly what it was: notice of termination of support and 30-day eviction notice. I clicked send. Read receipts appeared in short order. Tessa replied, subject, nice try. You can't be serious, she wrote. You're bluffing. There's no way you'll throw your brother out. He's family. I forwarded her reply to my attorney and typed a single line: proceed as instructed. By mid-morning, Wells Fargo's fraud unit sent their own sharp email: formal, chilling, and effective. They flagged the attempted $485,600 loan as fraudulent, demanded reimbursement for processing fees and investigative costs, and put a 90-day clock on the couple to cure the damages or face both civil action and criminal referral. I forwarded the correspondence to Tessa with no commentary. Her response to that email was a small, wounded howl of indignation. She accused me of going to the bank to ruin them, of trying to destroy their future. The family group chat, the always noisy collective, that had become the core of public opinion ignited. Opinions divided. Allegiances formed and reformed in 50-word bursts. Mom's tone bargained. Dad's messages read like a man split in two. Aunts and cousins chose sides without seeing the paperwork. Someone suggested we talk it through, as if the facts were a long family gripe to be settled over coffee. Someone else wrote that I was cruel, that I'd humiliated Gavin. Someone posted a passive-aggressive gif. The chat became a place where distance replaced nuance. At 1:59 p.m., a process server walked Tessa through the notice in person. She signed, middle finger lifted for the camera, a small, childish protest. It was not the bravado she imagined. It was a gesture that, in the light of the evidence, looked like a tantrum with legal consequences. Over the next few days, the machinery of bureaucracy began to hum. Mortgage autopay permanently disabled, credit cards frozen, fraud alerts placed. Across consumer reporting agencies, legal holds applied. Gage launched a campaign of calls that I refused. The family sent messages that I left on read. I had to let their anger be loud so the truth could quietly do its work. Tessa formed a defensive counterattack. She created a separate chat called Family Meeting, invited every member of our circle, and attached the legal notice along with her version of events, a tear-streaked statement about how I was villainizing her and abandoning Gavin for a title. She captioned the documents with theater-grade accusations: public humiliation, corporate arrogance, a money-first sister who would rather bully than love. I left the group without comment. There was no point. When someone opts for drama over facts, the facts get drowned in the performance. The more they performed, the more I buried myself in the paperwork that could not be argued away. I tracked new applications and their names, alerted issuers, and documented every suspicious entry. Wells Fargo's litigation notice sat like a hard brick in my inbox, a necessary inconvenience that would, if needed, be the wedge between claim and consequence. On Tuesday afternoon, Tessa called my parents and staged a scene designed for maximum heartbreak. The sobs, the shattered breath, the descriptions of betrayal. Mom answered the call like a woman who has been trained for a lifetime to believe the worst of anything her children could ever be accused of. For a heartbeat, I wondered if she would demand a family reconciliation, a softening at the edges of truth. She did not. She did not yet. Instead, Dad, who had quietly commissioned the investigator months earlier, sent me a short, shaky message that read like a confession. I was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. Thank you for handling it. Please be careful, he called. Later, and we spoke for 30 minutes in the kind of conversation that feels at once like a balm and a final tally. He told me of the nights he'd suspected something, of how he had watched Tessa's confidence and wondered. He'd been silent out of fear of accusation, of being old-fashioned or judgmental. He regretted it by the end of the week. Tessa had filed 2 small claim suits, aimed at me, one for emotional distress, and another claiming defamation. She attached screenshots of family chat messages where she cried publicly, a post on social media where she framed our family as rich villains discarding the poor. The courts assigned case numbers with an almost clinical indifference. I responded. Through my lawyer with the same clinical language. Evidence attached. Bankruptcy filings, the private investigator's report, bank statements, recorded messages, copies of texts and emails, phone logs, names of witnesses. The judge set a hearing. Date. In the meantime, the countdown clock on the eviction kept moving. Meanwhile, the bank settled quickly and quietly. The fraud unit's letter carried the kind of authority that makes people squirm. It landed in their inboxes like a guillotine shadow. No one likes the idea of criminal referral. No one likes court. When institutions get involved, the stage lights that drama craves go dark, replaced by the cold, utilitarian beams of process dot through it all. I kept my private distance. I canceled all incoming calls from the Whitfield household, changed my personal number, and let my assistant screen anything that bore their names. My home address moved off public records where possible. My attorney set up a privately held P.O. box for deliveries. There were nights when, if I was honest, the isolation felt like both punishment and sanctuary. I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that comes when you have done the hard, honest work and can finally stop pretending. Then Memorial Day arrived and my parents insisted the family still gather. Tradition, they said. We could set things aside for one afternoon and pretend normalcy. I suppose they wanted the illusion of peace. I drove to their house with a stack of documents in a thick manila folder balanced on the passenger seat. The backyard already smelled like coals and sauce, and kids darted between chairs with sticky fingers. The picnic table was covered in a red checked cloth, an Americana stage set for a family drama. I walked in like anyone else. Casual nods, half smiles. The heat of the day sat heavy on everyone. Tessa stood near the grill, hat on, arms moving in practiced domestic choreography, keeping the scene neat and rehearsed. Mom saw me, and for the first time in days, her smile slightly faltered, then forced itself into place. I stepped to the big table and set the manila folder down with a sound that was too loud for the lull of conversation. Heads turned slowly, like a ripple crossing a pond. People glanced at the envelope. Someone snickered, thinking perhaps it was a recipe or a newspaper clipping. The next moment, I opened the folder and began laying out Poppy's deed, eviction notice, foreclosure notice, bankruptcy discharge. I spread them in a line between a bowl of coleslaw and the potato salad. Silence fell hard. It was immediate and absolute. An old aunt let out a small gasp. Someone's beer hit the grass and sloshed. The grill's sizzling seemed distant, like a sound from another world. Tessa stepped forward with a laugh. That was too brittle for a woman who'd been planning to command the room for days. What is this? She demanded, voice pitched from maximum outrage. Is this some kind of show? You dragged this here? One by one, the documents spoke for themselves. The printed deed, the recorded signature, the bank's fraud notification, the bankruptcy records, each page was a nail in the coffin of the narrative she had been building. That we were a family who shunned and punished, that I was a money-obsessed. Sister Doc Gavin dropped his plate between us, the contents scattering like an accusation in themselves. He dropped to his knees and began to plead. Please, Parker, you have to believe me. I swear I didn't know. No, I said. You had 30 days. You chose to live without asking whether it was true. Tessa lunged with a kind of animal desperation, hands reaching for the papers. Dad moved and grabbed her wrist in a reflex. An old man holding a child who had broken the rules. Mom's face crumpled. People started to murmur, to pick sides, to rescan the evidence that had once been hidden under layers of charm and carefulness. I left the picnic quietly, my heart steady. There was nothing left to say. The rest of the family would have to decide how they would live with the knowledge now in front of them. I drove away while the yard behind me filled with the sounds of people trying to decide whom to believe. Night, my phone filled with missed calls. I did not answer. The house I had once paid for, the ritual of support I had offered, and a kindness that had been repaid with theft, those things were now a chapter closed with legal papers and official seals. I slept with the knowledge that I had chosen truth, and in that choice I had also chosen solitude. In the weeks that followed, legal notices multiplied. Wells Fargo filed demands for fees. Creditors opened suits. The couple fought back with social media blasts and pleas of betrayal that tumbled across the internet's immediate courtrooms. Our hometown, the places we'd grown up in, learned. New narratives about us, whispers, half-truths, flourished accusations. But the paperwork kept finding its mark. Financial institutions froze lines of credit, titles were reviewed, and courts set dates. The world of documentation, the place where performance and pretense cannot hide, moved in steady administrative waves. Where feelings convulse and headlines flare, the process is dull and exacting. Signatures verified, timestamps noted, filings docketed. It does not care for your grief. It only cares for the truth laid bare. And the truth finally started to do what truth does. It rebalanced things. I was not spared the cost of the fallout, the looks, the unanswered calls, the unshared holidays, but I was spared the quiet terror of being complicit in a lie. I had a ledger that matched the world as it was, not as I'd hoped it might be. 3 weeks from the day I handed the manila folder onto my parents' picnic table, the first mechanics of foreclosure began to tick. The mortgage company warned of acceleration due to default. Lenders wrote letters. W-2 South and bank records were subpoenaed in civil suits. The public part of this ordeal had begun, and I kept doing what I always do. I managed the facts, I notated, I archived, and I prepared for whatever legal motion would arrive next. The personal part, heartbreak, the loss of contact with a brother, the way one's family can rearrange itself like a house of cards, was something I carried privately. Without fanfare. There are moments in life that carve themselves into memory. Not because they're dramatic, but because they force you to see what you will not let yourself see anymore. Laying those documents on the picnic table was one of them. I left the yard that day not triumphant and not remorseful, simply certain that I had chosen a path that, whether right or cruel, was honest. By June, the house I once bought to give my brother stability was officially in default. Notices piled in their mailbox, deadlines passed, and each week the mortgage company's tone shifted further from courteous reminders to stern warnings to legal obligations. Even though I had stopped paying, my liability was limited. The property was titled solely to me, and I was the only one financially shielded. I had expected Tessa to scramble for a way out, to bluff her way into some miraculous investment, or charm a lender into another high-limit card, but the fraud flags I'd placed across every bureau were now the walls she couldn't climb. The day the lender scheduled the foreclosure sale, I felt an unexpected quiet settle inside me, not satisfaction, not revenge. Something more like the stillness that comes after a storm has finally spent itself. I didn't go to the courthouse steps on the morning the house was auctioned off. I didn't want to see strangers raise paddles over the place Gavin once believed was his, the lawn he'd mowed for the first time with pride, the kitchen where he'd bragged about family dinners they never actually hosted. I worked in my office instead, the emails and contracts a more predictable language than grief. At 11:07 a.m., the trustees sent me the finalized paperwork. The property reverted to the bank. The deficiency balance was waived because I'd never been the borrower. It was a clean break for me, an impossible one for him. That same week, the consequences that Tessa had been outrunning for years finally caught up with her. Wells Fargo served her with a civil suit seeking repayment for the loan attempt, fees, and damages. 2 credit card companies she had slipped into, Gavin's name behind his back filed separate claims seeking full payment plus interest and penalties. Between all three, the judgments totaled more than $160,000, if she ever found. Steady work? Garnishment would swallow most of her wages for over a decade. Gavin hadn't fared any better. His credit score plummeted to a brutal 510 an anchor, tied to every financial decision for years. The automotive shop where he worked discovered the lawsuits during a background check for a promotion he'd applied for. They let him go the same day. No severance, no references. They simply couldn't risk an employee whose financial mess could compromise their insurance and liability obligations. Our parents felt the shockwaves next. Tessa had managed, even after the documents, to convince them that everything was still salvageable if only I would forgive and support again. But the lenders didn't forgive, and the courts didn't delay. Mom and Dad listed their cozy Durham house in August and accepted an offer $10,000 under asking just to close quickly. They used the proceeds to help cover the freshest loans. Tessa had coaxed Gavin into signing before. I cut off access. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex off Guest Road. It wasn't terrible modest. Clean, manageable, but for two people who had worked their whole lives to secure something stable, the downshift was devastating. Mom, I later learned, still keeps the porch light on when she knows Gavin is visiting. As if he might step outside and remember who he used to be. As for me, I did what survival required. Blocked their numbers, changed my personal cell, changed my work extension, redirected all mail to a P.O. box under the company's umbrella. My assistant filtered every unknown call. The silence became a boundary I had waited my entire adult life to enforce. 2 weeks after the foreclosure finalized, a voicemail from an unknown number slipped through 4 minutes of Tessa crying, screaming, begging, blaming. I didn't listen past the first seconds. I deleted it and emptied the folder. I heard nothing. After that, but sometimes late at night, when the city outside was quiet and my office lights dimmed to that faint gold glow, I'd pull up the public records on the old house. Not because I missed it, but because for years I'd poured invisible labor into creating a stepping stone for Gavin. Seeing it listed again as bank-owned, seeing the emptied rooms and the realtor's photos, shook something loose in me. They patched the walls, repainted everything a flat beige, torn out the countertops Tessa had insisted she needed to run her imaginary empire. It looked sterile, unloved, exactly what it had become. In September, my attorney forwarded a letter from my dad, 3 handwritten pages in blue ink. The words leaned slightly left, as though he'd been writing faster than he meant to. He apologized deeply, earnestly for staying quiet when he should have spoken. He wrote that Mom cried every time she drove past their old neighborhood. He said Gavin slept on their couch some nights, hollowed out and ashamed, and that he'd stopped talking to Tessa entirely. The letter ended with a question he tried to phrase gently. Do you think we could ever sit together as a family again, not to fix everything, just to talk? I dictated my reply. Just one word, no. My attorney mailed it without commentary. Weeks passed, then months. The world kept rotating. The labs at Ardenex kept buzzing. The launch date for our device crept closer. The life I'd built, the one my family dismissed as cold or lonely, became the life I finally stepped into fully without apology, without simmering resentment. People still asked me quietly, awkwardly, if I felt any guilt. If I missed my brother. If I regretted letting the truth do the damage I wouldn't let myself do manually. They asked whether blood should matter more than betrayal. Whether I'd ever consider forgiving them. The truth is simpler than any moral lesson. People try to layer on top of it. Protecting your family doesn't always mean holding them close. Sometimes it means cutting out the infection before it spreads. Sometimes it means refusing to let someone burn your future the way they burn their own. Sometimes it means walking away so they can finally see the wreckage without you standing in front of it. And sometimes often you sleep better when you stop carrying people who were always willing to carve pieces off you to feed their ambitions. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss the guilt. And I don't miss being the family joke. I only miss the version of Gavin who existed before he forgot the difference between loyalty and blind devotion. But that brother, whatever innocence he had, whatever softness made him easy prey, was gone long before I stepped in. Tessa didn't just con him. She hollowed him out so she could fill him with her own reflection. Some nights, I wonder where he sleeps. Whether he's rebuilding or letting himself stay in ruins. Whether he understands why I did what I did. Whether any part of him believes I loved him enough to stop carrying a weight that was crushing both of us. But I never wonder if I made the wrong choice, because when I closed that door, when I walked away from the barbecue, from the pleas, from the guilt loops and accusations, I felt something loosen in my chest. Something unclench. Something heal. Sometimes protecting the family means being the one willing to take the cut, endure the screaming, bear the blame, and still walk away because staying would have destroyed you. Sometimes the villain in the family story is just the only one willing to tell the truth out loud. And sometimes the quietest person in the room ends up being the only one strong enough to stop the entire house from burning down. I sleep well now.